Hello, everybody. My name's Joel Deadmau5. I've been following Jonathan Winbush for quite some time, and stay tuned here as he dives deep, really deep, into Cinema 4D and Unreal. Let's go!
What up, what up? Winbush here, and today I'm excited to show you guys this. Now this logo animation is actually the second one that I'm doing officially for Epic Games. They're sponsoring a series of videos where I take the Unreal Engine logo and I animate it in a variety of styles. And so this one I'm calling geometric. And if you want to see exactly how I made this, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So I have Cinema 4D open. I'm going to walk you through the steps on how I took this project from Cinema 4D into Unreal Engine. So if I click play here, you can see that I have this sphere coming out from the background there. Then we have this tube come up, this comes on, and the ball keeps going down. So if I just click the camera here, we can pull back to see the scene that I have built out here. It's really simple. I have some geometric designs in here. I have a couple of tubes on the side here. And if you want to see exactly where I got these shapes from, I actually pulled it from this website here. So I'll leave this up so you can see the URL, but I was able to pull some Illustrator files down from here, from all these different shapes and stuff like that. I mean, it's really cool laid out. Like I'm using this one here. I pulled it out, brought in the Illustrator file into Cinema 4D, just extruded it, and then I just started laying them around where I wanted them to be in my project here. And so it's just a real simple setup. If I click play, you can see we have the ball come out and 100% dynamically roll through this tube. We're just going through here. You can see the camera kind of following it through and everything. Then it goes through this hole here. And then if I come around to the back, you can see the setup that I have here. And so the one thing about bringing stuff from Cinema into Unreal is some of the stuff that's in Cinema isn't going to translate to Unreal. So you have to get kind of creative. So like if I click play here again, you can see I have this half sphere here, and that's because I wanted it to kind of just evolve from the wall. And then once you see the ball come out, you're just like, well, where'd this ball come from type thing. So if I continue to play this, now you can see a ball pops on, and this is actually dynamically pushing this ball out just like that. And if you look over here, I have some keyframes on here. So if I just start to scroll this over to like around frame 79, I believe, you can see I have a keyframe here and the scale is at 111. But if I go forward to 80, I have it at 000. And this way, when I bring it into Unreal Engine, it's going to look as if it disappeared because the scale is at 0. And then I have my other ball go from 0 to 1. And that's the way I was able to make that illusion go as well. So the next thing I want to show you guys is kind of like some of the cameras that I set up in here. So you can see I have a total of 6 cameras in here. Like if I click on camera 1 and click play, you can see this is where we have our ball come down. And then if I click on camera 2, we're going to be inside the tube. And if I click on 3, I did some interesting here. So you can see that we have a tag here. And this tag is actually always pointing at the ball here. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of have like a dynamic camera in here as well. So if I continue to click play, you can see our camera is always following the ball. And so if you wanted to recreate this, all you have to do is click on your camera, come up to tags, come down to animation tags, and then click on target. And then that brings up this little target symbol here. And then all you would have to do is drag your geometry or your nulls into right here where it says target object. And then that means no matter where your camera's at, it's always going to be pointing at the object that you put in here. So if I continue to go through these cameras here, I'm going to go to camera 4. And this one is the one where we start to see it come through there. And then camera 5 is the close-up shot. And you can see I have a target here as well. And that's because I wanted to have the camera just kind of rotate down as the ball was going through. So you can see I have a null point here. And the null is right in the center of the area where I wanted my camera to always look at. So if I continue to play here, now you can see how everything is starting to work out. So I'm going to come back to camera 1 here because I want to show you some of the things that I had to do to be able to get the animation from Cinema 4D into Unreal Engine. And so if I come up to my layout tab up here in the upper right hand corner and come down to animate, this is going to bring our dope sheep up here. Now, the one thing about Unreal Engine, it does translate the keyframes really, really well. And so what I like to do is I like to bake my keyframes in Cinema. And then I know once I bring my stuff into Unreal Engine, everything's going to work out according to plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take like my intro bar here that comes through the wall. And I'm just going to click and drag it down here. I'm just going to start clicking and dragging all the different items that I want to bake keyframes for. And so one tip too is right here, when you have cameras that have tags on them, it's always a good idea to bake these keyframes out as well. I've noticed that sometimes that if I bring a camera into Unreal and it has a tag on it, sometimes it doesn't translate the rotation right because there's no rotation keyframes in here. And so to be able to alleviate that, I'm just going to click and drag my cameras in here as well. And then another thing, if you notice at the top here for these animations here, so where I have my tube come on and then I have this come on as well, we can't bake keyframes for this. It's not going to translate right. So I'm going to show you another method on how I was able to get this into Unreal Engine as well. But first things first, I'm going to go back to the first keyframe. Then I'm just going to click and select all these here. I'm going to come over to functions, come down to bake objects, and then let me pull this up to the center so we can see it better. And so I'm going to have everything check marked on in here. I want to have it for the full duration, which I have 900 frames in here. I want to have all these clicked on, and then I like clicking on all parameters just to make sure I have all my ducks in a row and I'm not going to miss out on anything. So from here, once you're happy, you just click OK. Just wait for everything to bake out. And then you'll notice that it made copies down here as well. So this is for if you wanted to actually keep your original files here, you can as well. But what I'm going to do is, just so we don't have so much stuff coming over to Unreal, I'm actually going to delete some of the original files here. And what's cool too is, like, we don't need this null anymore because we baked our keyframes in this camera. So we can actually delete both of these here. So my null and my camera 5. I'm going to delete that, and then I should be good to go on there. And then my intro ball, I'm going to delete that, and I'm only keeping the copies in. And then up here where I have like my push block, so if I come back to my start up here, and let me pull back around to the back so I could just show you guys what I'm talking about. So I had these two blocks here, and these have dynamic tags on them. But since I baked my keyframe from my sphere here, I actually don't need these anymore either because they're not going to be doing anything because our dynamics are actually all baked into our sphere. So I could get rid of these here. Now, if I come back to the beginning and I click play, and let me click on my ball roll here, you can see we have all of our keyframes in here. And if I look at my timeline, you can see all the keyframes here as well. So if I click on play, everything's just going to go according to plan. So now I have all my dynamics keyframed in here. I have my camera keyframed in here. And so the last step is I want to be able to bring these into Unreal as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these one at a time and export these out as Alembic files so that I can bring those Alembic files into Unreal Engine. So I'm going to select on this tube first. And you can see I have it under this null point here. I just did this for organizational points. So I'm going to click on this right here. Then I'm going to come over to File, come down to Export, and I'm going to export an Alembic file. And so this part is important as well. So right here where it says File Format, we want to make sure that we're using the top one. We don't want to use Legacy. And then for the end frame, I'm just going to do it the full duration. And then right here is the real important part, because if you don't have selection only, it's actually going to make an Alembic file for the entire scene, which could get pretty large. And so I like to select my objects one at a time and then export those so I can bring them into Unreal one at a time. And that's more for texturing as well, so everything isn't just kind of merged together. So once I'm happy with all my selections here, again, make sure you have selection only check mark. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to find where I want to save this at. So I'm going to make this folder right here. And I'm actually going to name this one after this. So it's called Top Tube. So I'm just going to name this one Top Tube underscore UE4. So notice it's going over to Unreal. Click Save. Okay, so that's saved out. So I just have some real basic materials in here. If I pull back from my shot, you can see that I don't even have everything textured in here. And that's because I like texturing everything in Unreal once I get in there. And the only reason I have like these couple of materials here is because on this ball, I know that I wanted to have one side have one shader and the other have a different color. And so I put those on there just so I have placeholders so I could kind of swap those out in Unreal. And then here too, I wanted to be able to see through my tube. So I just made like a clear material. And for my neon one here, you can see that we don't even have anything going on in here. I just have illuminance, and I always like bringing this into Unreal, even if it's not connected to anything. So it's a lot simpler for me to be able to take this texture into Unreal and just automatically add glows to our scene instead of going into Unreal and kind of messing around with the material editor. This is just a quick and easy way. So if I know I want to have any type of lighting that lights from materials, I always just bring that in, even if I don't have it connected to anything. And again, I turn off my color, I turn off my reflectance, and only have my luminance on. And I don't even worry about the color because I can always change out the color once I get into Unreal. So I always bring that over And then for these materials, it's just real simple. Like it's just the color. I have reflectance on here. It's just a basic setup. All I did was change the color out to something different there. And so now that we have our scene set up and ready to go, I'm going to click on File. Come down here to Save Project for Cineware. And if you use version R20 and before, it's going to be called Save Project out for Melange. But from R21 and up, it's going to be called Save Project for Cineware. So I'm going to click on this. And so this one, I called it Geometric First Shot _ build. And so I'm just going to name this one _UE4. So my next step from here is I'm going to open up the Epic Games Launcher. Then whenever you open up the Epic Games Launcher, this is what you're going to see on here. And so I'm just going to come up to the upper right hand corner where it says Launch Unreal Engine. I'm using the latest version right here, 4.25. And once we have that launch and everything loads up, you'll see this is called the Unreal Project Browser. And this is where we'll pick our presets out. And so we actually have one here for film, television, or live events. So I'm going to select this one here, just click Next. And then I'll always start off with a blank slate. So I'm going to click Next again. And then if you have a ray tracing enabled card, you can always turn on ray tracing here so you don't have to do it later. And then down here, you're just going to save out where you want to save your project to. And so I'm just going to name this one tutorial _ breakdown like that. And then I'm just going to click Create Project. And now this is Unreal Engine. So there's a few things that I'm going to do here. I'm going to delete some of the stuff that's on the slate so we're starting fresh and clean. I'm going to delete this floor plane here because we don't need it. Then I'm going to also delete this player start because we're doing cinematic. We're not doing any type of interactive experience. And then down here on the right where it says new plugins are available, I'm just going to hit dismiss, and then project is out of date. Just click update and then we're good to go there. Then my content browser, we just have our main page here and nothing else in there yet. I'm going to come up here to my world outliner in the top right. I'm going to start deleting more stuff out here. So basically I'm just starting off with my light in here. And then if I click on the details tab, I'm going to come down here in the transform. I'm going to click these yellow icons and this zeroes everything out, which is the way I like to work. And if you notice on my screen here, this is called the Deadmau5 importer. And this is how we import Cinema 4D files into Unreal. I have it permanently enabled here, and I had to go into some coding to be able to get that to work, which I have a tutorial on my site on that if you want to know how to do it. But if this is your first time opening up Unreal, you're not going to see this in here. So to be able to pull this up, you're going to have to come over to settings, come down to plugins, and then from here, you just come over to here where it says built in. Then you just search for C4D. And then you'll see this come up right here. This enabled is not going to be clicked on. So you're going to click on this. And then you'll see down here, right above new plugin, it will say restart. All you do is restart. It takes a couple of seconds. It's going to restart Unreal Engine. And when it does, your screen should look like this. And then you'll have the Deadmau5 plugin here. So from here, we're just going to click on this. And then we're going to look for the files that we actually had. So I'm going to come over to C4D _UE4. And I'm going to click on this one. So this is the one _UE4. So I'm going to click open. I'm going to click OK here. I'm just going to bring it into my content folder. And then right here from my import options, I'm just going to leave everything on because I want to bring my entire scene over. So I'm going to click import and boom, there we go. Now we have our scene in here. And now the way that we control stuff in Unreal Engine is it's kind of like game control. So if you're used to playing games and you like using a keyboard or mouse, we're just going to use the WASD. So just hold down the right click on my mouse and I can control my camera like so. And it's a little bit dark in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for my light. So I'm going to scroll this up. Click on my light source. I'm just going to move this around so that we can see our stuff here. So on my X, I'm going to leave this 0. On my Y, I'm actually going to bring this to like -46. Then my Z, let's say like 246. And now we can start to see a little bit of light on our scene if I scroll back here. And actually, if I push in, you can see that we have a whole bunch of preview icons here. And that's because we're not using dynamic lighting. So to fix that, right here under transform, just click movable. And now we have dynamic lighting in our scene. And then you can see we have like a harsh edge here on our shadow. So if we want to alleviate that, right here under light where it says source angle, I can actually just start dragging this up and that's going to soften it a little bit. And then as well, like I don't like how dark it is in here. So I can actually light this with HDRs, which is really easy to do now. So if I come over to lights, click right here where it says HDR backdrop, just drag this into my scene. And you'll see that it has like this HDR that's already in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down in my scene just so we don't really see it too much. So let me move this down here and actually make this a little bit bigger in size. So right here under size, I can make this like 250. And then I'll just keep moving this down until we don't see it. because my cameras are all in here, so we're not going to see this at all. So I'm good there. And then also, let me scroll in here. And I want to put in my own HDR to light with. So I'm actually going to just import some HDRs that I already have. And if you want some free HDRs, I found this site. It's called hdrhaven.com. It has a whole bunch of free HDRs on here. So this is usually where I pull my stuff from. So I have some stuff downloaded. I have this one that I really like. It's called Skate Park, I think. So I'm just going to look for Skate Park down here. There we go. Skate Park 4K. Just going to click and drag this into my content browser. There we go. So now I have my HDR in the scene. So if I double click on this, you can see my HDR is a little bit blurry here. And that's because it's not coming in as 4K. So under compression here, if I just click this down arrow where it says maximum texture size, I'm just going to do 4096 because I know this is a 4K texture. And then click enter and then just give us a second to snap in and calculate everything. So now you can see our HDR is a lot more clear here. So I'm just going to come over, click save, exit this out, then make sure I have my HDR backdrop here selected. And you can see right here where it says cube map, I'm just going to click and drag this in the here. And now you can see it changed our lighting here a little bit, but it's still a little bit dark. So I'm going to come over to intensity, bring this up a little bit. Let's say maybe around 5. And now it's starting to really lighten this up. So, you know, you just go in here, we could drop lights in here and everything as well, just to kind of brighten this up. But I just wanted to show you that because I thought that was really cool. We could bring in HDRs and we could have that work with our light source here. And so from here, what we're going to do is come down to my folder here for geometric, double click this. I'm going to start off by double clicking on my animation folder. In this red box right here, this brings us to our sequencer. So if I double click here, you can see now we have a tab for a sequencer, and this is basically our timeline. So if I scroll through this, you can see now we have all of our animations playing, and we also have our cameras down here as well. So we have cameras 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The reason that we don't see camera 2 is because we don't have any keyframes on camera 2. So what we're going to do is come over here to our roll outliner. I'm just going to scroll up till I can find my cameras. I'm just going to actually click and drag this into my scene. So now I have camera 2 in here. And if I come over to my search tab here on my sequencer, type in camera, now you can see we have all of our cameras in here, 1 through 6. So from here, all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click right here on my camera. So it comes into the camera view. And actually, if I come up to perspective, we have a cinematic viewport, which will bring it into our correct aspect ratio. So I'm going to click on this, and then that's going to reset our camera. So I'm just going to select on perspective again, come down to camera 1. And there's our intro camera. And now we have all of our play settings here as well. So I'm going to click on go to front just so I'm at the beginning, click play just to make sure everything is animating as is. And there we go. So now we have all of our animations and our camera moves and everything in Unreal. So from here, it's just a matter of going through, bringing in our Alembic file so that we can actually have these two animate on as well. So if I go back to the beginning here, come back to my content browser, I'm going to click on content right here. And I'm actually going to right click and make a new folder. And I'm just going to name this ABC for Alembic. And this is where I'm going to put all my Alembic files. So if I double click here, and then if I click import, like this is the way that we have to bring over Alembics. We can't use the Datasmith plugin. So we're going to click this import button here. And then I'm just going to look for those ABC files. So I'm going to do it one at a time. I'm going to bring in my top tube or click open. And this is real important as well. So right here where it says Alembic, so we're going to use geometry cache. It says experimental, but it's perfectly fine to use. So we're going to click on this and we're going to make sure that we start at frame 0, end at 900. I'm going to scroll down here to conversion. For my preset, I want to use 3D Max, and that makes sure that everything comes in upright and it's not going to be inverted. So I'm going to click import. And then once you have it imported, you'll see that we have a little file here and that has like a light blue mark here. And that means that it's a Alembic file. So I'm going to do the same process for the other one. We have our top connector in here as well. So the next step is we're just going to bring these into our scene. So I'm just going to click and drag it into my scene. And you can see it comes up in the roll outliner here. So from here, you just kind of have to make it fit within your scene where you would have it at. So I'm going to come over to my sequencer, make sure I click my camera button to kind of get out of my camera view here, and then just align this up. So I'm going to click on this, drag this out, and just manually bring it into where it should be. There we go. So whenever we have it aligned, you can see that it's not exactly the full tube here, and that's because we don't have it animating yet. So in order to be able to bring in the animations, we have to drag this into our sequencer. So I'm going to click over here, my world outliner, just click my Alembic file, drag it into my sequencer. Then I'm probably just going to type in tube here in the search to bring it up. We have top tube right here, which is what we want. I always use this search function just to be able to find stuff in my scene faster. But from here, I'm going to make sure I have it selected. Click on track, click geometry cache, and now I brought up our sequence in our timeline. So let me scroll up in my scene here so we can see it. And if I play this through, you can actually see now we have our tube growing on here, in which I could click my old tube because I'm just using this for reference, and I can actually delete this. So I'm gonna come over to my raw outliner, make sure I have it selected, just click delete, click yes, and now when I play through, I can see my tube is in there now. And if you need to adjust it at all, just click. There we go. So now it should be perfectly aligned. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my top connector here. So I'm going to go back to my content browser, click and drag my top connector in here, and then going to bring that into my sequencer as well. Type in top. I'm going to bring it all the way to frame 0. Click on the plus sign, geometry cache. And now when I play it through, you can see it's down here. So I'm just going to click in. Let's see what happens if I click this. There we go. So I was able to zero out my location. It brought it into absolute 0. So I'm going to take the old one, click on this, click delete, click yes. And now when I play it through, now we have those files playing. And if you can notice, we can only see the inside. And that's because I have to add a material here and make it a double-sided material to be able to see the inside and outside. So I'm going to select on this, come over to content browser, then come over to my file that I brought from Cinema. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of this tutorial, is I'm just going to click and drag this material over here, and you can see the green box is going to highlight where we could drop it. Then I'm going to double click on this, and then if I scroll down here under material properties, so let me pull this up so we can see it, we can actually make it a two-sided material. So I'm going to click on this, turn it on, click save, and there we go. So now we have a double-sided material on here, and everything looks good. If I play this through, there. So now we have our animation playing out and everything is animating appropriately. So the next step from here is I'm going to show you how to make these different camera angles to actually own independent shots so that we can edit them in Unreal and then get it all set up for real-time rendering. So what I'm going to do is, remember that glass material that I brought from Cinema? I'm just going to use this as a placeholder for now so that we can see through our tubes. And then if I scroll down and then I just select on this, there we go. So we have some glass there, and then I believe I need to make glass here as well. And so this is just temporary. This glass doesn't look too great coming from Cinema. We can have our own glass that we can actually get from the marketplace later on to click and drag in here to make it look more realistic. But this is just so we can start seeing how everything's going to play out in our tube for our camera shots. So from here, I'm going to come over to my content. I'm going to come over to my folder from Cinema, click on animations, and then right here, I'm going to actually left click and just drag this out. And when I do so, we have some options here. So what I want to do is click copy here, and then I'm going to rename this one shot 1. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to double click this. It's going to open up our sequencer, and what we did was we actually made a duplicate of our original. And so I like setting up shots based off the original, but I always want to keep the original one in here just in case I mess up. I can always delete the duplicate and then start over. So again, I'm going to double click shot 1, come over to the sequencer, then I'm just going to type in camera, and I'm just going to make sure I have all my cameras in here, and I'm just going to go through one by one, and I'm just going to start deleting these. So my camera cuts track here, I'm just going to delete that. And then I'm going to select camera 2 through 6. And I'm going to delete that just so we have camera 1 in here. So right here, I'm going to delete this actually so I can show you how to bring it in manually. So our camera cuts is what's actually going to bring our track into our editor here. So if I come over to frame 0, then click on this green box here where it says camera cut track, click on this, and then we select our camera from here. And what this is going to tell Unreal is this camera right here for this sequence is what we want to use to render out with. So if I click on this camera button here, now you can see we're looking through the eyes of this camera. And this is going to be what we have for shot 1. So I'm going to duplicate it for shot 2. So I'm going to come back to my original, click and drag over, click down to copy, and I'm going to rename this shot 2. Double click, and I'm just going to go through the same exact process here. And I'm not going to do it for all the cameras for this example. I just kind of want to show you the layout, and then I'm going to show you how to edit these together. So again, camera cut, delete that, delete camera 1, Then I'm going to come to camera 3 through 6, delete these. And then I'm going to add a brand new camera cut. Make sure I select camera, come down to camera 2. Now when I click on this, now it's going to show us this point of view from our second camera. So whenever we click play, we can see it starting to animate through. And same thing, we're not seeing the material play through here, and that's because we need to make it a double-sided material. So if I come to content browser, come over to my materials, click on this material, scroll down here, two-sided, click save, and there we go. So now we have a two-sided material. And again, this is just temporary for this shot here so we can line everything up. So I'm going to come back to my animation folder, select this, slide over, make another copy here. And I'm going to name this one shot 3. And I think this is going to be the last one that I set up just to give you guys an example. So I'm going to double click here, go through the same exact process. I'm going to type in camera in my search bar here. So I bring up only the cameras, delete 1 and 2, and then delete 4 through 6. Make sure I'm on frame 0, camera cut track. Then I'm going to bind camera 3. And there we go. So now we're looking at camera 3, which looks at the ball going through there. So now what I want to do is I'm going to set up a blank sequencer so that I can start clicking and dragging these shots into that sequencer and start to edit everything out. So I'm going to click back on my content browser, and I have this content browser over here too, which if you wanted to set up like a second content browser, all you do is come over to File, come down to General, Content Browser, and you can actually open up 4 at once. And the reason I like doing that is because once I'm down here in my sequencer, I just want to be able to click and drag them into my scene here. So I'm going to click back here, come to my top folder here, and I need to make a sequencer so that I can start editing. So right here under Cinematics, I'm going to click on Add Level Sequence. And I'm just going to name this one Unreal Edit, and then click Save. And then if I click back on my content browser, you can see that we have our Unreal Edit sequence here. If I double click on this and then come to Sequence tab, it's completely blank. So what I could do now is I can start clicking and dragging those shots into this, and we can edit it out just like if we're working in Premiere or Blackmagic Resolve. So what I'm going to do now is come back to my second content browser, double click on these, come down to my animation folder, and just start clicking these shots and dragging them over. So I have shot 1 here, and if I click on the camera, we can look through the lens of this camera. So I'm just going to kind of pull this out. And one thing you need to notice too, like our scene, the way that I like to work is 60 FPS. And that's how I have my shot set up as Cinema 4D. And when you bring it into Unreal, it knows that that shot is 60 FPS. But when I made a brand new sequencer at default, it comes in at 30. You'll see this icon here. That means that our frame rates are mismatching. So all I have to do is click on this, select the appropriate frame rate, and now we're good. So if I come down here as well, it only made this sequence like 330, which I believe we had 900 frames. So I'm gonna select enter there. Then I'm gonna go all the way to the end, hit this bracket. And so now we have a 900 frame sequence. So I'm just gonna select the end of my sequence here, click and drag this over to about, what is it, like 190-ish, 189. And so I know from here is when I wanna start my next shot. So I'm gonna select shot 2, just drag that into here, then bring it all the way to the beginning. So I know our shots are going to align. And then if you have this right here, this magnet set on, this is going to enable snapping. So if I just click and drag it, it should snap it to the end of the next shot, which is right there. So if I click on this top camera, now this is going to look through all the different shots. So if I select this, it's going to play through shot 1, then automatically go to shot 2. Then I can have shot 3 start about there. So let's say like around 269. I'm just going to click and drag this over to 269 and then bring in shot 3. Same exact process. Make this go all the way to the beginning. Click and drag this over. And you can already start to see how powerful this is. So I can have this go to like 364. Go somewhere right there. Then I can actually hit the end bracket because I'm going to stop here. Then if I click on this, I can make it a loop. So now if I click play, now we can see playing back in real time all of our different shots. Then from here, all you have to do is go through, set up the rest of your shots, and then, put in more lights and add materials, in which I'm going to show you the final version of my shot here, so I can show you some of the stuff that I did for ray tracing, and then I'm going to do a preview of real-time rendering so you can see how fast this renders out. So if you want to see some of the materials and stuff that I use some stuff 100% free from the Epic store, in which I use some wood textures and some glass textures, which I'm going to show you where to find those. So right now I have my Epic Games launcher open. I'm going to come over to Marketplace. Then I'm going to come over here to where it says free. I'm going to go to the permanently free collection. So this is one of the materials that I'm using here, the 4K wood material. So if I click on this and you wanted to add this to your project, like I really like the way that this wood was looking here. We have a whole bunch of different options. So in order to add this to our project, you would just click on add the project here. And then you would look for your scene that you had set up, which I believe mine's called tutorial breakdown. So I would select this, click add the project. And the last one I'm going to be using is this glass pack here. So if I click on this, this is called the Advanced Glass Material Pack, and this has a whole bunch of cool different glass designs. If I click over here, you can see the different types we have. We have wet, shattered, frozen, clean, and dirty. So again, if I want to add this to my project here, just click add the project, find my project, and click add the project. And then we should be good to go there. And then from there, all I did was select these different materials, start editing out my scene and everything. And then it looks the way that it does now. And then once you have all these materials in your scene, you just start up Unreal Engine and you should be able to use these. And so in this next part, I'm going to show you my complete scene. I'm going to go over ray tracing, color grading, and then show you real-time rendering. When it's all said and done, this is what the final scene looks like. So if I come up to perspective, come down to cinematic viewport, I'm just going to come down here to my sequencer and actually click this camera so I can see everything play out down here. You can see where we left off. We left off at shot 3, but I completed them out down here from my final edit. So if I click play, actually let me click the camera here, and I'm going to click play. You can see everything playing out in real time. And we're going through shot by shot and everything looks good there. All right, so that's what the sequence looks like in real time playing back in Unreal. Let me show you some stuff that I did to just kind of bring this thing to life. So I have this over here, the post-process volume, in which if you want to find it, come over to visual effects and you would just add it here. And what this does here, it allows us to control everything in our scene, coming from ray tracing to shadows to actually color grading, and we can actually add LUTs in here as well. So if I click on post-processing volume, and then I just start scrolling through here, you can see we have stuff like bloom effect, which if I turn this off, you can see the highlights of the bloom going off. So let me actually pull out from my camera here, right there. So if I click on this again, click on bloom, you can see it actually turns it off. And so what this does is give us like a realistic effect from our neon light that we brought from cinema. Then we could come down here even further, click on chromatic apparition. I just add a little bit, but that's cool that we could do this in Unreal Engine as well. So you can see where I'm going. Like this is like a post effects studio all built within Unreal. I have lens flares down here as well. But the cool thing I really want to show you guys was down here in the color grading. So if I come down here to global, I actually have contrast turned on. So let me come back to my camera shots here. Let me find a good shot to maybe showcase this with. So maybe this shot here. If I turn on and off contrast, you can see that we're able to add, you know, like it curves to our scene here. And if I turn this up even more, you can see the contrast really affecting our scene. So I thought that's cool because we don't even need like anything outside of Unreal. Like we get like our final shots the way it needs to look, all within Unreal Engine. We have complete control over everything from shadows, the mids, the highlights. And if I click down here on MISC, I even have a LUTs file in here. So I brought some LUTs here off of the marketplace, and I have some free ones on there. But if I turn this off, you can see how it completely changes the dynamic of the scene. So if I continue to scroll down, you can see we can actually add ambient occlusion as well. So if I turn off the intensity, you can see it, especially up in this little corner here. I'm turning on the AO in there. And then down here, I want to show you guys the ray tracing translucency, because this had a really big effect on my scene. So if I come over here, maybe to like around this shot here, this really had an effect on our glass here. So if I turn off refractions, you can see how it's, you know, this is with ray tracing on and this is with it off. And so I like the way that it looked with this. I mean, this was just my artistic interpretation of how I wanted this to look, but you can see how ray tracing is really making a huge difference in our scene. Like even if I click on, let's say reflections, and right now I have ray tracing on. If I come over here and do screen space, you can see it looks totally different in our scene. So that ray tracing reflection helps add a lot of value to this, and just ray tracing in general. If I come over to edit, come down to project settings, and then come over here to rendering and just type in global. Come down here to lighting. You can see we have a place called screen space global illumination. It's in beta, but I've been using it in production and it works totally fine. So let me find a scene here that might show it off. I believe this one worked really well. So if I turn this on, you can see, especially in these dark areas, we're adding global illumination in here, which looks really nice. And this isn't expensive at all. So we can still play everything back in real time and get good results here. So once we have our scene and everything set up in here, the last thing I want to do is show you guys real-time rendering. This is my favorite part to show everybody. This is the main reason that a lot of people come into Unreal, is because they like to utilize this feature here. So once I have my setup here all set out and laid out the way that I want, I'm going to come up here to where it's window, come down to cinematics, come down to movie render queue, click on this. And this is the new way of rendering cinematics for Unreal Engine. They just started in this current version 4.25, and I believe they're going to be adding on this. And so if we want to get started, we click on render, and then I'm just going to look for, I can actually type it here in my search, type start, because I want to do my start shot. There we go. And then right here, I'm going to click unsave config, and this is where we're going to configure our files out at. And then right here by default, it's going to do a JPEG. Then if I click on output, this is where we're going to save everything out from. So I'm just going to click right here, and maybe I'll just save it to my desktop. So I'm going to look for my desktop here, make a new folder, select folder. I think everything else here is fine. So I'm just going to click accept. And then once you're ready to render out, just click render local, and then give us a second to get everything warmed up. But as you can see down here, we're just rushing through our frames, like total frame count. This is all running in real time. It's going to go through each shot, and it tells you the frame, it tells you the shot number here, and the frame count is going up. And as you can see right here, I mean, our estimated time started at what, like 20 seconds, and it's just flying through these shots here. You're seeing how everything is playing back. And then in the end, all you have to do is bring this into your editor. Like I had 3 separate shots set up for the final product. So I just rendered these out scene by scene, brought them into an editor, rendered out, and that was good to go from there. So hopefully everybody found this informational. I'm having a lot of fun taking the Unreal Engine logo and just, getting outside of my comfort zone, making some really creative animations here. If you're finding this to be helpful, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and leave me a comment down below if you have any more questions. And until next time, stay fresh, keep creating, and I'll catch you in the next video. Make sure you subscribe because I'll be seeing you soon. Take care.
Winbush.